Everything unlimited, limited. Please make sure audio is on. Controls, WASD und die Maus.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing the Beginner's Guide. My name is Davey Wreden. I wrote the Stanley Parable, and while that game tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Coda in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work pointed me in a very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way. And mostly it's just Coda learning the basics of building a 3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Coda starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point, he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made, until suddenly one day, he just stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Coda. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch, you can email me at daveywreden@gmail.com. Okay, that's about it for introduction. Let's take a look at Coda's first proper game. As each game is loading, I'll show you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November 2008.
So, moin moin und hallo. Herzlich willkommen zu... Fängt er gleich wieder an zu reden? Ja, wir spielen ein Spiel, was eigentlich nicht wirklich viel kommentatorisches Können fordert. Okay, ein weißer... Das sieht aber cool aus mit dem weißen Raum, weil man denkt irgendwie, da wären keine Wände. Wetten, der fängt gleich wieder an zu labern. Ich werde nicht viel reden in diesem Spiel, würde ich sagen. Das heißt, guckt einfach zu und lasst euch unterhalten. Whisper Machine, status active. Evacuate immediately.
This game is called Escape from Whisper, and it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Coda.
Okay. Kein Schussgeräusch? Hell oder dunkel? Ich geh mal hier links. Okay. Hier sollen wir wohl nicht durch? Warning! Whisper Machine, status active. Ja, ich bin ja schon auf dem Weg nach draußen. Häng. Das ist ziemlich schlauchig irgendwie. Na, da kann ich nicht rein. Was? Hostile Alien?
It kinda looks like this game was abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere, but then clearly there are no enemies anywhere. You can't even reload the gun when you run out of bullets.
Oh, missed.
But ultimately we don't really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. And I think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
Enemy force neutralized. Begin ship evacuation.
I love how you can see the bottom of the universe from this road.
Die Skybox. Ja, vielleicht hätte er unten bei der Skybox mal... Ja, aber so erweckt es den Anschein, dass es eine durchgehende Fläche wäre, aber da unten sieht man dann die Ecken. Ist das Spiel für Blinde oder warum gibt's hier diese Punkte? Toll. Na, immerhin die Türen gehen auf. Und ich habe mal ein bisschen Zeit zu... Oh Gott, was ist das denn?
Apparently this space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
Huch. Aber vielleicht hätte ich das gern gemacht. Whisper Machine.
Okay, this is the part that's interesting. The game has this narrative about the Whisper Machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Ja.
Hey, you there, in the engine room.
Ja.
You could save us all.
Okay.
That beam is powering the Whisper Machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam.
Okay. Ich soll mich da also reinschmeißen.
For all of our lives. Would you do it? Could you give yourself?
Naja, ich glaube, ich habe keine andere Möglichkeit in diesem Spiel. Das sieht irgendwie komisch aus. Aber ich will nicht. Nö. Kein Bock. Ach, Menno, die Tür geht nicht mehr auf.
This is not a branching point, unfortunately. The only option is to step into the beam.
Ja, ist ja gut. Tot.
Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
Jetzt frage ich mich natürlich, woher weiß der Narrator, der da spricht, dass die erste Version des Levels einen Fehler hatte? Weil an und für sich, woher hat er die ganzen Sachen? Hat er etwa die Festplatte von dem geklaut oder was ist hier los? Und ich wollte eigentlich... Ich kann mich nicht mehr bewegen. Oh. Okay.
The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it. Like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these really weird and experimental designs.
Skybox.
So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
Loading. November 2008. Okay. The past was behind her. Hallo? Ich kann mich nicht bewegen. Ich drücke hier die Tasten, aber es passiert nichts. Ja. Und nu? Spiel. Hallo? Hallo?
So try walking backwards.
Okay.
Yep. In this game, you can only walk backwards.
Ja.
So it's a short and relatively minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Code is trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
But when she stops and looks, it becomes clearer. Okay. Also grafisch jetzt, ich sag mal, wenn ich jetzt ein Anfänger wäre, dann was? But the future is always behind her. Also, selbst ich als Anfänger hätte das nicht so hingekriegt. How will she find the strength? Ach nee, dann gehen wir ja wieder runter. Was? To confront it. Was?
It's a short little thought, it says what it wants to say, and then it ends. Didn't need anything more than that. Which to me is why it works, because it gets out quick. Okay, next one.
Okay, November 2008. Oh, kann ich jetzt wieder vorwärts laufen? Ja, ich kann vorwärts laufen. Okay. Immerhin hat jemand dran gedacht, dass man nicht von der Welt fällt. You are now entering. Schild sieht aber ganz cool aus eigentlich. Ja.
And that's it.
Was?
Okay, the meaning of this game
What?
won't be clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting.
Okay. Mich stört ein bisschen, dass es immer so ruckelt, wenn er anfängt zu reden. Dezember 2008. Nonsense
Oftentimes,
in
Coda
nearly
would
every
put
direction.
bizarre titles like this one at the start of his games.
Okay. Vor allen Dingen, dass man
I
standardmäßig
wish
auch
I'd
danach
known him at the time that he
guckt.
was making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, like, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do?
Naja, ist halt so. Irgendwann muss man die Sachen auch mal beenden. Werden wir langsamer? Ja, wir werden langsamer.
Once you've been slowed to an absolute crawl, the door at the top of the stairs opens. So why, if Coda's not showing these games to anyone, why bother opening the door at all? Well, to show you, I'm modifying the game here so that when you press enter, it'll bring you back up to full speed so you can enter the door for yourself.
Ja gut, also wenn ich jetzt hier ein bisschen mehr Zeit hätte, dann würde ich natürlich nicht Enter drücken, sondern würde ganz langsam gehen, aber ja, machen wir es mal schneller. Vielleicht ist das eine Art, sich selber zu bestrafen. Dass er quasi hier oben erst hinkommt, wenn... Huch? You are a gate? Was? A series of leverage manuals come with a game giving you incorrect instructions on how to play? A button you press to stop the chaos that doesn't work?
A room that's warm and nice and filled with little ideas for games.
But the game is nothing but giant blocks of text explaining what's happening? A normal game where you have to scream into...
Coda would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. It can be a very slow climb to get there.
Ein Spiel, wo man alle 15 Sekunden in ein Mikrofon schreien muss, um weiterzuspielen. Ein Schlüssel in einem Spiel entsperrt eine Tür in einem komplett anderen Spiel. Hä? Wie soll denn ein Spiel wissen von... Naja, Januar 2009. Ready, Set, Fish! Ein Fishing-Game? Aber an und für sich sehen die Spiele ganz cool aus eigentlich. Muss ich schon sagen. Auch hier ist schöne Holztextur. Kommt mir irgendwie bekannt vor. Nicht ganz. Ich hab meine die Farbe, die Sättigung rausgenommen.
Well, this is new for Coda. It's an actual puzzle. Go ahead and see if you can solve it.
Ich komm nicht zurück. Hör auf. Ja. Moment. Krieg's hin. Ich muss nur schnell genug durch die Tür laufen. Ah! Aha! Ah! Aha! Hier ist der Schalter. Jetzt frage ich mich natürlich, sagt er noch irgendwas zu dem Spiel, zu dem Puzzle, wenn man es lösen will, oder?
don't forget that solution, because we're going to see this puzzle again soon. We're gonna see it a lot.
Okay, und hier ist wieder diese Blindenpunkte. Ah, hier ist so ein oranger Balken. Oder? War das eben nicht auch schon? An und für sich sieht das ganz cool aus. Hier könnte man auch gut wohnen, abgesehen davon, dass man hier ständig irgendwie cheaten müsste, um wieder hochzukommen. Ah, toll. Kann nicht so hochspringen, ich bin zu fett. Okay.
So that seems to be it, right? You walk down a corridor, you solve a puzzle, you get to the end. Simple enough.
Ja.
Alright, now I'm going to modify the game again, so that when you press enter, it'll remove all of the walls from this room.
Da hat jemand Copy und Paste gemacht, würde ich sagen. Okay, das ist die Eingangshalle, oder?
How about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing. I actually find it funny that this game comes after the stairs game, since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior. And then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same, is that most of the time you don't get to know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player.
Treppe.
So if your role here is not to understand, then what is it?
Ja, ich würde da... Ja, Januar 2009. Ich würde da gerne mal runtergehen, aber... Wie könnte man nicht woanders hin? Nur da links, wo er das hin haben will. You are now exiting.
Aha. So, this, combined with the entering game from earlier, tells us that Coda believes his games are connected somehow.
Glaubst du?
It could even be that the stairs game and the puzzle game are literally connected in between this and the entering game. There's a bigger picture that all of his games are meant to play a role in, some larger meaning that we won't be able to grasp until we've seen all of them. And once we have, we can step back and start to understand what exactly that bigger picture is.
März 2009. Geht dann immer noch weiter. The Great and Lovely Descent. Okay. Oh, ein Haus. Wir stehen auf einem Hügel? Auf so einem weißen Hügel, damit wir höher stehen?
Let's talk about video game development for a second. Every video game runs on what's called an engine, which determines what the game can and cannot do.
Ja.
So in other words, the engine is a set of tools for game development. To make all of these games, Coda is using an engine called Source. Like all engines, Source has certain things that it does well, and it has certain things that it does poorly. One of the things that it does very well is boxy linear corridors. That's why so many of Coda's games are set in these large, flat, empty rooms, is just because he's working with what the engine does well.
The Streetwise Fool.
The tools available to the creator shape what kinds of creative work they're going to end up making. You might consider paying attention to the architecture in Coda's games, to notice how they seem to stem from an engine that's very good at producing linear, boxy corridors.
Huch. Nein! 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 Ich bin runtergefallen! Nein! Nein! Autsch! Ich wollte nicht runterfallen. Ich wollte die Treppe runtergehen, aber nein. Och, gucken wir mal über den Rand. Bestimmt ist da eine unsichtbare Wand, die uns daran hindert, runterzufallen. Nö. Warum auch? Okay. Ups. Warum auch Wände irgendwo einbauen? Hier in der Mitte ist eine Wand. Hier kommen wir nicht rein. Ja, an und für sich... Gut, das ist jetzt nicht wirklich rund. Was ist das denn? Pferdestall? Sieht irgendwie komisch aus. Also das Tor hier ist aufgegangen. Toll. Nur ist zu. Hallo? Ich wollte da weitergehen. Was ist da hinten? Hinten ist eine Halle. Toll. Hallo? Hör auf zu backen. Das ist ein Gefängnis. Das ist ein Gefängnis und wir haben noch nicht mal den geraden Boden in der Zelle. Wir rutschen ständig nach vorne. Was soll denn das?
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go.
Ja.
If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that.
Echtes Gefängnis halt. Einfach mal eine Stunde chillen im Spiel. Das erinnert mich an ein anderes Spiel, wo man halt einfach nach einem Tag wiederkommen muss, quasi. Oder das Spiel einfach